Hey everybody, did you know you can go to colinmullen.com in order to get art and art prints? It's true. It's the point of the website. colinmullen.com. It's where I put my art, and you can buy art there, and you can look at art there, and you can be like, that's an art there? colinmullen.com. Yeah. So hey everybody, there are a lot of weird recording errors with this painting. I don't know what happens. The camera just recorded it in like this weirdly dark format, so I bumped up the contrast. It's a little bit noticeable. Hopefully you don't notice when it switches from when I realized it was doing whatever that is and not. It also just didn't record me signing it for some reason. I don't know what that's about, but I digress. I think there's a lot of things going on in this painting, despite the fact that I don't love it as much as some of the other paintings I've done, that I realized would be really cool if I pushed it in a different direction. And so I'm going to experiment with that for the next couple of paintings, and you'll get to see that, and it'll be pretty cool. And yeah, that'll be good. But yeah. Real quick announcement as far as Patreon goes. I do the thing where I thank people for, being at $5 or more. If you're not aware, I'm going on vacation here soon, and as such, there's going to be one video that comes out while I'm gone that I won't be able to thank everyone appropriately. I'm going to just thank everyone who has paid at, or said they're going to be a patron at that tier by, the end of the month before I leave, and then just sort of hope that works. So I apologize if I miss your donation. I will make sure I put you down in the comments on that one, but it shouldn't affect this video, so don't worry about it for now. But I digress. Anyway, you guys are probably more interested in what I'm going to talk about here today, so let's get into that. In most horror stories, you hear it from the perspective of the person who is being haunted, the person who's having to nail the door shut because there's a zombie on the other side, the person who has to deal with a cursed artifact or what have you. Very, very rarely do you hear it from the perspective of the monster themselves. And this is a special kind of story because essentially that's what it is. This is a true story, by the way. As some of you guys know, if you've watched my older videos on this channel, I used to do ghost hunting. And I feel like this is an appropriate story to tell since it's about Halloween. We had a cemetery local to our area that was more or less not used anymore and more or less just historical, but we believed it to be haunted. Now, whether or not it was or is completely irrelevant. It was where we'd bring people who, wanted to join us on, ghost hunts before we'd bring them to an actual, location. Because sometimes these locations would be 3 to 4 hours away, and you don't really want to have to drive someone home on that long of a trip. It can kind of mess up the whole night, and you don't want someone freaking out the whole time because that's going to make it really hard to do anything. So it's sort of irrelevant whether or not this place was haunted or not. What's more important is that we took people there, told them it was haunted, and then culled out a few people who would otherwise have joined us and been problems on actual missions, or whatever you want to call it, jobs. But I digress. We had started to notice that someone was breaking the gravestones. Someone was leaving wax on, different parts of the cemetery, leading us to believe that someone was showing up, and probably not someone who's actually experienced in these things, but doing some sort of occult stuff in the graveyard late at nights. And it was seemingly on nights of, the full moon or on solstices. And it just so happened that the Halloween of that year was going to be a full moon. So we figured it would be a good day to, camp out. Now, I know some people are going to be like, why didn't you just go to the cops? Well, first off, I wasn't that kind of kid. Second off, it's really not something you can bring to the police. Oh, hey, while hanging out in the graveyard late at night, we noticed that someone has been messing with them. It's a little bit, you're going to be suspect number one. Let me just put it that way. So for whatever reason, we decided to take this into our own hands and just hang out, see if we could find them, see if we could catch them in the act, and, be, I don't know. I don't know really what our plan was from there, but we were going to confront them regardless, or at least understand who they were. So we show up and we drop ourselves off in several waves of cars, and so that way there's no car up front near the front gates of the cemetery. This is a small, overgrown cemetery that was more or less just sort of like kept in repair by, I guess, historians. I don't think anyone actually like put recent graves there. It was really bizarre, honestly. But regardless, there was a small wooded area near the back of the lot. It was a cold Halloween that year. It was somewhere in like the 30s to 40s, I want to say. Like above freezing, but pretty close to it for those of you that don't speak American and our stupid system that we use. But regardless, for a Texan, that's pretty cold. So I brought my wool coat and I brought my leather gloves, and I decided to hide into the forest area along with everyone else. We all kind of spread out so we could get different vantage points so that we could see stuff differently from each other. Part of that was just due to us being bored, because, you know, hanging out in a graveyard waiting for something to happen is kind of boring for some people, I guess. Eventually, I'm separated from everyone else, and we're texting back and forth via our flip phones because that's the era it was. And I see a car pull up. I see a car pull up into the cemetery and stop and turn its lights off, and a bunch of people get out. This, to me, seemed like this was probably the group in question. I see some of my friends move from their spots and their different hiding spots, move forward, and then I get a text that says, "Get over here." Based on the movements of the last person I saw, I figured that they had actually confronted them. There was already discussion being had over in that area, so I decided I'd go ahead and sneak up there as well. By the time I got close enough that I could see what was going on with the group that had pulled up, I noticed that none of my friends were there, and I was in plain view, probably. There's an elderly gentleman and a few teenagers who had pulled up in some sort of SUV or something. It's been a while. Being in the position where I was, and with the lighting being as poor as it was, I sort of assumed they had seen me, but I guess they hadn't, because when I popped out of my hiding spot to confront them, because I had assumed that they had seen me, one of them screamed. Now, the one of them that screamed was wearing cat ears, which instantly was sort of a giveaway that they probably weren't some hardcore occultist. They were probably just some idiot kids wanting to hang out in the cemetery late at night. But regardless, they immediately started hiding behind this elderly gentleman who asked who I was, which, to be fair, was a good question. And I decided to ask him it as well because it seemed fair. That kind of led to a stalemate. It's worth remembering at this point that I had, brought my knife with me. So I was holding a knife. I was wearing a thick wool coat, leather gloves, and I'm 6'3", 6'4", and I probably had a bad look on my face, like I was kind of upset about the situation. So it was probably fair in a cemetery to be a little bit freaked out by me. They asked me who I was, not wanting to give my name away because everything about this situation was just turning bad real fast. I just opted to say I'm the gravekeeper, and you guys need to leave. And they go, okay. And so they start backing away, and I start to feel bad because now that I've realized that these are not the people that we're looking for, I apologize, and I move the knife to my left hand so that way I can reach my right hand out to shake the guy's hand, and I go, look, real sorry. And he goes, no, you stay there, as he backs away, pushing everyone else into the car, and they drive off without putting on their seatbelts, if I recall correctly. We all had a good laugh about that later, but yeah, I was a weird kid, just realizing that now. But that's the story of how I guess I was the monster once in someone's horror story, I'm sure. But anyway, let me get into the people who have made this video possible and thank the people who supported me at the $5 tier or more. Thank you, Wapfu. Thank you, Theodore Corbier. Thank you, Spiral. Thank you, Spencer Kane. Thank you, Punkster. Thank you, Phoenixia Theoran. Thank you, Oboist Kirby. Thank you, Mortibus. Thank you, Micah. Thank you, Maliciousness. Thank you, Lost Nevada. Thank you, Kayla Hollinger. Thank you, Jeremy Kinney. Thank you, Gaizuzan. Thank you, Duxu. Thank you, Daniel Rotwind. Thank you, Cappy Rose. Thank you, Bubba Fair. Thank you, Bep. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Amber. Thank you, Adam Kearney. And thank you, Ants! Anyway, thank you guys again for supporting me. If you're interested in being in that list of names there, all you got to do is pledge $5 or more on patreon.com/RevScarecrow. Link in the description. If you enjoyed this story about me being a ghost hunter, there are a couple more stories coming up here on screen very soon from the last couple of years when I've told these stories. And I hope you enjoyed them. If you did, go ahead and give me a sub. I'll see you around for the next one. Goodbye.